Hello and welcome back to episode number 14 of Pureblu Spotlight. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Manish and me are the founders of Pureblu, and Spotlight is a 30-minute session held every month where we would like to share our thoughts on the three guiding pillars at Pureblu called RAP, which is reliability, accountability, and productivity. How are you doing, Manish?
Doing very well, Ajit. How are you?
Absolutely good. All right, before we get
Super.
started, a little quick run at Pureblu. At Pureblu, we have two product lines: our SaaS platform and easy-to-use software for air conditioning service providers to manage their customers, field resources, the trouble tickets, and the life cycle of the air conditioning and refrigeration systems. Our second product line is Smart AMC, where multi-city, multi-location, all kinds of brands of air conditioning systems are managed as a one-stop solution under annual maintenance contracts, which also gives you an IoT device free of cost. Now, this device sends you daily reports on your energy consumption. And you must remember 70% of your energy consumption, whatever application it is, commercial, residential, comes from air conditioning. And a well maintained air conditioning system can save your pockets by almost 20%. 20% of that energy consumption can be saved. So today is episode number 14. And like we promised you last time, episode number 13 was all about what is required for an ideal field service. And we told you, based on your feedback, that we're going to bring in all the technology. So Manish leads the tech here. So Manish, what are we going to talk today?
So today, so it's like you said, this is episode 14, and I feel like the first 13 episodes has really been about the industry and all the challenges it faces, and that's what we're actually trying to solve. But behind the scenes, there's obviously a lot of technology, and so today's episode is going to talk a lot about the technology, the existing technology we use today, and the future technology we see, and just in general the future of technology, because there's so much stuff happening. And in fact, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about just happened in the last 10 days. Can you imagine? And so that's happening all the time. So that's what we're going to talk about: the tech that we're using today and the tech we're going to use in the future at Pureblu.
Awesome. So let's start with the first thing. And why don't you explain as to what is the real technology that we are using to build Pureblu?
Yeah. So when I look at the way Pureblu is structured today, we really have two things. And first is the SaaS platform. So let's first talk about the SaaS platform. That is, what our dealers see. That's what the technicians see, is they interface with our platform. And when we say platform, people, what the hell does that mean? What does platform mean? So really, when we talk about in technology, we call it, the tech stack. And really, it's the building blocks of how we are able to give somebody a web interface or a mobile interface. So we start from the very beginning, and we're using something called, what they call is the LAMP stack. That's LAMP. So that's Linux, which is the operating system. So there's Microsoft Windows, and then there's a whole genre called, and of course there's Macintosh as well. And then there's a third one that is called Linux, Linux, and that's the operating system that basically is open source, and many companies and many web servers and things like that all use the Linux. So that's Linux, that's the L in LAMP. Next is Apache. That's the web server. Again, this is open source, just like Linux. And what open source means is that anyone can use it, and you don't have to pay one penny, which is amazing. And that's one of the reasons why the growth of the internet has really taken off, is because a lot of the basic building blocks of the internet are free, and there's no licensing costs. If you had to compare the licensing of a Windows server versus Apache, obviously there's a huge difference, and that's what we use, and that's what most startups use, is free software. So we've got LA, now we got M. M in this case stands for MySQL. Again, this is open source, and this is where the data resides. So if you look at the competitors out there to that, that would be Microsoft SQL, and the big daddy is Oracle, and these of course all have large licensing fees. So we use MySQL, which is free. And when I think people hear free, they think, oh, it may not be secure. It's actually probably even more secure than anything else, because you can imagine this is free. It's out there in the open. It's used by millions and millions of organizations. So these databases, these platforms, these different tools get used daily. And so you can imagine they're constantly getting attacked, and they're just showing its robustness over the years. And the last piece in the LAMP stack is something called PHP, and that's the programming language that we use. So different programming languages out there are JavaScript, Perl, C++. So there's a whole bunch of them. We're using PHP, which has been around for about, I think about 13, 14 years. So again, it's very industry hardened. It's tried and true. It's tested. And again, it's free. So that entire LAMP stack is what most companies have been using previously. And a lot of them are now moving to something called the MEAN stack, which is MEAN. And that is basically using MongoDB, that's using Express web server, using Angular for the front end, and then using Nginx as the web server as well. So Express is more of the API that people used to write to. So don't want to get too technical, but that's really the heart of our system is the LAMP stack. And that's really what kind of controls everything. And then when we look at our users, they're probably using our web interface, which is built using Angular. And the technicians use the Android app, which is using native Android technologies. And that's really what our technology stack looks like today. And all of that, of course, needs to sit somewhere, and that is where it sits on a cloud hosting platform. And the three big ones are Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Hosting, or Google Cloud Platform, GCP. We're using AWS, which is the one that most startups end up using because it's very easy to use. The onboarding is pretty simple. I'd say Microsoft is more tuned towards the Fortune 500. They're already using Microsoft products like MS SQL, or they're using Office 365. So for them to migrate into Azure is very easy. And then Google is just Google. They're actually the ones that should have really taken this cloud platform by storm, because they're the ones that are everywhere. But I think they were just so focused on their search engine business that they didn't really take too much time, and they're playing catch up to the other two. And that is when we talk about platform, that's it. That's what we're doing at Pureblu as of today.
Yeah, and it's done good for us, and we really scaled up using that platform. But Manish, if COVID put everything down, one of the good things that we did in COVID is we said, let's build something new. And during that COVID period with restricted movements, we actually built the IoT device. So you must share that whole, how we launched Smart AMC and what's the technology behind that IoT device that we built and which is deployed now across so many customers.
Well, I mean, first of all, that's one of those things that just kind of happens just organically. We didn't really plan for it, to be honest with you. A couple of things is I remember I was in the office one day and I was looking at some of these HVAC journals. And in one of the HVAC journals, they talked about creating an energy monitor. And I was like, what? I was like, why is an HVAC journal talking about energy saving? I thought it'd be filled with things about, particulate matter, air quality, cooling, freons, refrigerants, all of that stuff, which I've heard of in the HVAC industry. And so when I mentioned to you, I'm like, why are they even talking about it? You kind of looked at me like, are you an idiot? Because 70 to 80% of electricity costs for most people in a commercial setting is air conditioning. And that's when I'm like, oh my God, that's really hard to believe. And that's something that should really be tracked. So then I kind of dug more into that article and I'm like, wow, this is really, I shouldn't say easy, but it's definitely something that's doable. And that's something that we could potentially do on our own, because really we're just taking the data from, a distribution panel and then sending it to the cloud, aggregating the data, and then sending that report to the consumer. So I kind of played around. I used a very inexpensive chipset that a lot of people use. It's called the Expressive, ESPRESSIF, ESP32 and ESP8266 chipset. And this is what they call a microcontroller. So these microcontrollers, they cost very little. They're like probably $2, $3. They're very inexpensive chips, and they have a very specific duty. They only do like maybe 3, 4, 5 things, and that's it. And this one actually connects to Wi-Fi. So that was one of the key ingredients we needed some device that can connect to a Wi-Fi. And then from the Wi-Fi, you get out to the greater internet. And then from the greater internet, we could actually get to our platform, which sits on AWS, and use their IoT platform. So that's what we did. So I put together a little proof of concept I had a little wireless device sitting at home, and it was just creating random numbers. I mean, so we weren't actually connecting to the power grid, because when it comes to electricity, I've got a real phobia in touching anything with electricity. So my thing was, as long as this device can be sending, random information to the cloud securely, and we can aggregate it, and then we can create a report, I was pretty sure we would be able to find someone that would actually create this device for us. And so I did that proof of concept, put it together, and sure enough, what ends up happening is the data goes to our AWS platform. It's encrypted. Once it gets to the platform, it gets de-encrypted, and then we put it into a database. And this is it's a little bit unique, because I shouldn't say unique, but we don't use MySQL for that. We're using something called NoSQL. So we're using a Mongo database. Again, MongoDB is an open source database, and this is what a lot of people use for what they call time series data. We have a lot of data that's just connected via time. That's really it. It's not connected to anything else. And then you can kind of connect millions and millions of rows worth of information using MongoDB. So that's what we do. And then I guess the really interesting part was, once this proof of concept was ready to go, the pandemic happened. And then we're like, now what do we do? And then that's when we kind of said, okay, well, now we need to figure out how to actually get this thing manufactured during a pandemic. And so we luckily found someone in Mumbai that actually is a very large manufacturer of what they call PLCs. And I remember you told me about this person. I said, that's impossible, because this is all done by the Chinese. They've got scale, this and that. So we got connected to them. And sure enough, they actually manufactured this device for us, and we're using it to this day. And it's been an amazing story. And it's one of those things that just, if you had to write it out, this is how it's going to happen, this is how it's going to happen, this is plan 1, plan 2, plan 3, it would have never happened. It just kind of happened organically. The pandemic happened. And then, more importantly, because the pandemic happened, people were like, I need to be able to monitor what's happening at a remote location, because I can't sit there and get there. And that's where the beauty of this device is coming into. So it is part technology, but the truth of the matter is, it's really around a service called Smart AMC, where people get that PDF on a daily basis. And based on that report, they can see their energy consumption. And of course, the real thing that we did was we actually attached a monetary value to it. So obviously, if you look at commercial rates, it's usually around 10 rupees a kilowatt hour. And the minute people see this, so this report that we're seeing here, I can see for December 9th, this cost me 250 rupees for the day. The minute people start seeing some sort of cost attached to it, their mind completely changes. And that's really what we're trying to do with the Smart AMC product. And that's how the genesis happened on the technology side. It's been, and of course, I must say, I'm not a coder, but I was able to code this up a little bit, the proof of concept. I was able to find, code on the internet, used it, because again, it's all open source, and that's the beauty of it. Sure. So some people have, done it, they remixed it, they redistributed, and then we were able to get the SDK for AWS IoT. So that's the software developers kit, and basically transfer the data using encrypted methods so that no one can hack it, and it gets safely transported to the AWS cloud. And that's one of our most amazing achievements, not because it's technology, but because it all happened during when you think about the lockdown, people say, oh, nothing was really happening. So I think some companies were really busy, and others were just kind of waiting and watching to see what happened. And I think we were on the other side, because when you're in the HVAC industry, guess what? Hospitals have to run, vaccination centers have to get running, all of that stuff was still happening. It wasn't like we were, a bunch of consultants that like, TK, we can work from home. This is, hey, some things still have to run no matter what, come hell or high water.
Absolutely,
That's
man.
it.
And I guess, now today we have so many of our customers, large customers now, who are deployed using the Smart AMC, doing national AMCs across the country. And one of the things that both Manish and me keep doing is, we work on that 3 pillars that we spoke about: reliability, accountability, and profitability. Stay very close to the customer and understand what is the next thing that we can develop. That's how the Smart AMC came in, the IoT came in, and then we built something even more interesting. And I know that's been a game changer for us. So the question that we are asking is, how do we make it easier for customer to get his issues fixed without human interface, without the whole problem of people coming in between of what he wants, and also for
Yeah.
reduce the cost of the service provider. And that's when WhatsApp came as a point of discussion. So now you must share with now about how did we do that whole entire WhatsApp integration into our platform.
Yeah, so that again is so I think sometimes, when they say the customer is king and whatever the customer wants, you have to implement. I think there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think sometimes the customer doesn't really know what they want. I think they know what they need to get solved, but how to get there, that's where we come in. So one of the things that customers would always tell us is, we want an app, because that's what everybody hears. We want an app, we want an app, we want an app. My thing is, if you're a homeowner, of course, it makes different audiences, it makes sense. If you're managing 500 devices and you're all across India, maybe an app makes sense for you or a web interface. But let's say the average homeowner that maybe takes the smart AMC, he doesn't really need an app to report a problem, because for him, he has maybe 5 machines, maybe 10 machines at the max. And how often will those machines go bad? If they go bad like every week or every month, there's obviously a bigger issue, so that's when we realized that, what, this WhatsApp integration may be the best thing out there. So what we did was, we used the APIs from, well, now it's called Meta, Facebook, and we use the integration with them. So what ends up happening is when someone interacts with our chatbot, we check to see if their phone number is in our database of users and if they're connected to any devices. So the first thing we do is we say, hey, Manish, you are in our system, and these are the 4 locations or 5 locations we have listed for you. Then you pick the location. Then you say, okay, in that location, you've got these, 5 devices or 6 devices. And then you pick the device that you want. And then it says, okay, now this device, what is the issue with this device? And we give them, a top 10 list of the top problems. They pick that, and then the technician gets assigned to them, and they get that all in WhatsApp. And it's all very simple. And the beauty is everyone knows how to use, I shouldn't say everyone, but let's say a large majority know how to use WhatsApp in India, because we're always on it. We're constantly sending information, getting information, saying good morning to everyone in the morning on your group family chats. So everyone is very familiar with the WhatsApp interface. And that's when we realized that's probably the better way of going than trying to create the app. And the minute we released it, it has been an amazing game changer, not from the consumer standpoint as much, but also from the service provider standpoint. Because before, they would have to have, a couple coordinators, 2, 3 coordinators, and they'd have to take that call. Now that call is not being answered because it never happens, because now all that interaction happens on WhatsApp, and that's the beauty of it. And so it's not just, hey, this is a cool technology, let's try it out. It actually saves money, it saves time, it saves resources. Now that resource is freed up to do something else, and that's when people realized, hey, this is really useful. It's actually a workforce automation tool. And that's where people anyways are residing there every day in WhatsApp. So why not just send all the information to them in WhatsApp? So not only do you get the information about, when the technician is going to visit, but once the technician visits, he does his or her job cleaning or fixing the air conditioning unit. Then when the report gets generated, we actually send that report to you in WhatsApp, so you can quickly see to make sure everything is, valid and it's correct. If not, then you can quickly respond to us in WhatsApp. And that's really been, like I said, amazing for us, because it's all because of the APIs. And this is where I think, Facebook and Meta have really focused on India, is because they're obviously, when you look at the stock price for the last 1 year, it's not doing well. And they're trying to figure out how to monetize in every market. And I feel in India, their biggest, way of monetizing will be WhatsApp, and they're going to try to get every business to be on WhatsApp, and it really will be the central hub in India. It may not be in other countries like the US, but I definitely feel India, WhatsApp is going to be a very big part of how they move forward. And just real quick before I get to we move on to the next question. I saw the power of this really when I was working with, I was traveling in the US, and I had to use Delta Airlines, and I had to book a flight. I booked the flight, unfortunately, in the wrong name. And of course, here in India, if you book a flight in the wrong name, you have to essentially cancel the ticket. They don't do a name change in the ticket. So they actually cancel the ticket. In the US, I thought the same thing would happen. So I just got on Delta's. They didn't have WhatsApp. They use iMessage, of course, in the US. And it was an amazing process because over the next 3-4 hours, while they were working on it, I was seeing the updates in iMessage. Yes, sir, we've moved it to this group. This team, we're working on it. If there's any issues, let us know. But in the meantime, you can just kind of wait for us to respond back to you. And I could just see the whole history of it, and it was beautiful. It was much better than sitting on a phone call waiting for an agent. It all happened. I could do my job, they could do their job, and it was just an amazing thing. And that's exactly the same thing, we're trying to do with WhatsApp integration for Pureblu.
That's right, and that's been one of the biggest ease of users that we have seen. But Manish, as we discussed, each of these innovations or each of these product developments which we've done is being observing just the entire process of services and the customer's requirement. Now, from here onwards, and we are constantly developing. We're just moving the needle every day. So, what do you see the big technological changes that moving forward that we're going to see at Pureblu?
All right. Well, like I said, there's been a lot of stuff that just happened in the last 10 days. And so I'm going to talk about two things right now. The first is Jio launched 5G in certain parts of India. And we were just talking before we got on this call. I did a speed test from my phone. I've got an iPhone. It's an older model, so it's 2 years old. I got my Jio SIM activated for 5G. I walked around certain parts of town and I got up to 1.8 gigabytes per second. Right. Let that sink in for a minute. Can you imagine what that was 10 years ago? We were struggling with the 1 megabit connections, 2 megabit connections. And here I am on the street and I got 1.8 gigs. So now what ends up happening is, I know people are going to say, I don't need all of that. Yes, if you map that speed that we get right now to what we're doing right now, of course, it's overkill. Yes, I can download a movie in 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 minute, but this opens up a lot of possibilities that we can't even really fathom yet. And one of them is around virtual reality, actually. So, the metaverse is, kind of what they've been rebranding virtual reality, but that is really, imagine, when people put on those glasses, that requires a lot of bandwidth to transfer, that image to someone else. So now just imagine if you're a technician, you've got a very complex problem that we have to solve at Pureblu. So what could happen is we would have a bunch of junior technicians that we would send out into the field. And then the more senior people would be in the home office working with, virtual reality glasses and telling him, hey, Akshay, take a look at this, look at that. And, and it looks like they're both side by side. So they're actually helping each other, but one is actually on site and one is remote. But that is only accomplished by when you have lots of bandwidth. And that is really why 5G is being pushed. I know people feel like, oh, it's too much bandwidth, you don't need it. But when you start thinking of the possibilities like this, now imagine the intricacy of knowing the machine, the motors, getting in there, the level of detail that has to be there. That's really what we're talking about. Is then when you marry the bandwidth that's available and virtual reality for Pureblu, it opens up a lot. And of course, I'm not saying that, oh wow, only Pureblu can do it. Everyone is going to be looking at it. But that's when we look at technology with Pureblu, we're always trying to figure out how we can use it. And this, of course, is probably still 3-4 years down the road. But that's really what I see the technology moving forward. So I mentioned two things. The third thing I want to touch upon, and this just happened about 10 days ago as well, is something called generative AI. Or regenerative AI. So that's regenerative artificial intelligence. You might have heard a lot of things recently called about GPT-3. So that is the latest version of it. And just to give you a quick, recap of what it is when you go to Google today and say, tell me what is the fastest car available, it doesn't tell you exactly. What it will do, it'll give you a link. It'll give you a list of 5,000 articles, and it'll tell you to figure out which one you think is most useful. So then you click on the first one. And obviously the idea with Google is within the first 3-4 clicks that they present to you is where the answer is. But I have to click in there and then find the answer, So that is the traditional Google search methodology, and it's done fantastically well for them. Obviously, it's a huge company and they're doing a lot of things. But with GPT, what ends up happening is it's run by a company called OpenAI, Open Artificial Intelligence. It'll actually find the answer for you. So when you say, what is the fastest car? It'll actually say, do you mean electric vehicle? Then it is the Tesla Model S. If you mean, internal combustion engine, then it's this. It'll actually tell you the answer. So again, when you think about how does this affect Pureblu, just think about it, that if you can actually start chatting with the chatbot that we have and just say, you know what, my air conditioning is not working. Right now we say, okay, you know what, it's not working. We're going to send a technician out there. But imagine if you can chat with the chatbot and say, you know what, it's not working. And we can say, well, what do you mean by it's not working? Is it not cooling? Is it leaking? Or something like that, and then just get to the answer, and then that also saves the technician time because he knows exactly what he's dealing with when he gets there. Now, everything that we've talked about so far is around text, and that's really where artificial intelligence is based on grabbing all sorts of information. And obviously, the web right now is really text. A lot of it's text. Of course, we have images, we have video that's just coming. But now imagine taking all the videos around, let's say, HVAC motors, and then we film an HVAC motor and then say, hey, what's wrong with this motor? It's going to be able to visually see it. It's going to be audibly hearing it. Then it's going to run its algorithm on it and say, you know what, based on all the other billions of videos that I've read, heard, seen, looked at, this is what we think is the issue with this HVAC motor. That is where generative AI is coming. So it's taking all of the data that's out there. And right now it's amazing on the tech side. You can even tell it, hey, give me a 5-day itinerary for visiting Bombay, and it'll tell you what to do on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Yeah. So the same thing can be done, when we have more images, when we have, more video. We can take a picture of, an air conditioning unit, and it may be able to tell us what's wrong with it, or take a picture of the motor and tell us what's wrong with it. That's really where this technology is going. It's not about, hey, we have lots of bandwidth, how do we use it? It's actually trying to marry the two. And that's really what we're focusing on.
Manish, this industry has another problem is about the availability of skilled manpower. We don't have a certification or anything of that sort. And I think that's one of the things that we've always spoken, that whatever you do, of course, you got to make changes systemically, new education policy, but it's still not going to solve the problem. And I think technology can intervene out there. You spoke a lot about text, images, and video, and about virtual reality.
Yeah.
Why don't you share some of the thoughts that we've been discussing about how do you actually get the technicians certified, and how do you actually make sure that they have better skilled manpower in the industry?
Well, I mean, so I think that will come with a lot of these newer technologies, but just even basics, we, start creating a video library of what are the problems. And then when the technician actually gets that trouble ticket, and let's say the trouble ticket is, the water is leaking, then we present that technician with, hey, this is a Mitsubishi. We've seen this happen several other times. This is the video you need to take a look at. And we actually give them the specific information at that time. So that's the idea at the moment. Of course, skilling and certification, that all happens, by looking at, and again, that's where when you have a lot of information, you can start, crafting the curriculum based on what is actually out in the field, So we can talk about, this is what we should be teaching people, but this is what's actually happening in the field, and this is what we should teach them, based on what we can see from all the trouble tickets, not only in the city, but across the country and across the world. And that's really what Pureblu will be able to offer, is a very highly specified training program for the technicians. And one of the reasons why they'd want to be a part of Pureblu is because they will get very specific information and how to fix certain things.
Amazing. So we just have just about enough time, but I wanted to actually just pick your brains on that. You mentioned about GPT-3. Can you give a quick example so we can, just understand that better?
Yeah. So the one that everyone has been doing is, so it's GPT-3, but the one that just got released is the chat version. So you can actually interact and chat with that person. So an example is, again, the example I can give you is if I go to Google and say, I want to spend 3 days in Paris. You do that, it'll give you a million links on Paris, 3 days, and try to put together some sort of itinerary, or people that have put together itineraries. But again, you'll have to go through all of those things. But if you use the chat GPT, what ends up happening is you can say, I want to spend 3 days in Paris. So it'll say, okay, then it'll say, okay, what are some of the areas you'd like to look at? So it'll actually start asking you questions. Just like I said, on the air conditioning side, this is actually happening right now. So you can say, I want to visit the Louvre. Okay, so the Louvre, great. Are you interested in arts? Are you interested in visiting palaces? So it'll ask you almost like, Alexa. The problem is with all these, voice assistants, you're just basically telling them what to do. But this is more intelligent, saying, what, this person has already told me they want to visit Paris. Let me come up with some questions so I can narrow it down. Are you interested in fine dining in Paris? Okay, then here are the restaurants you should take a look at. Are you interested in visiting the Eiffel Tower? And that's really where this GPT chat is going to play a big part moving forward. And I mean, to some extent, I think it may start biting into the Google search behind that it is, that it's massive, business model for them, because it'll be much easier just to go to a chat bot, get my questions answered, and then just move on.
That's right. All right, guys. So this is just about time, and I think we've done justice to you. Manish, thanks a lot. We've done a lot.
No, we haven't done justice. We haven't done justice. We could have gone for another 1 hour, but you didn't want me to, so we have to end it.
We have to end it. Yeah. But we kind of answered quite a few of the questions that you guys have written to us about and spoke to us about. So happy to even answer more. Keep writing to us. Tell us what you would like to hear. And before we close, we're not going to hesitate from making a hard sell. So thank you for joining us today. And if you are an HVAC service provider and would like to see the demo of the software, please call us on the number. And we will actually get back to, I'm going to put up that number. Yeah, okay. So, yes. Did I get that number for you? All right. So, yeah, I got it. Yeah. So call up on this number and we can actually help you, give you a demo and enroll you into the platform and show you the benefits that we are actually putting through. But if you are a customer and air conditioning services, you want to change that whole thing in terms of energy saving, getting reliable services, trust me, call us on this number and we could actually get you great air conditioning services or smart AMC. But I can tell you one thing for sure, okay? The technology in the HVAC business is just beginning to start. And two of us, that's Manish and me, are going to lead this from the front. We're pretty excited about what we're doing and we think we can make a difference. Or not we just think, I think we're going to make a difference. We've already done some of it and we really want to go ahead and make that big change. So thank you very much, guys. So stay tuned. We'll see you next month with another topic that's of interest in technology and HVAC. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And thanks, Manish, for all that sharing.
Sounds good.